Hello everyone, my name is Lydia and today I wanted to share with you my smart home setup. All the gadgets and components that we have, how we use them, how they help, and at the end of the video, I'll also point out what we don't have and why not. Now, before I walk around and show you all the gadgets that we have, I wanted to touch on why we even have like all these smart home things in the first place. There are 2.5 reasons. So the first one is for conserving energy and improving passive cooling and passive heating. For example, like adjusting the shades to optimize the passive heating through the windows. And I will talk a little bit more about that as we get to that section of the gadgets. The second main reason that we have is for convenience. As a user of this smart home system, the main thing of the smart home needs to be that it is actually smart, that it actually saves me time and I'm not manually going to do things repetitively, but instead I'm able to automate certain things that happen on a routine basis or can be triggered by certain limits. So one good example, again, with the shades is instead of manually closing like a bunch of shades on the same wall, you can do it easily with just your app with one button. And the third and kind of a half reason really is security. I feel like we already live in a pretty safe area, which I'm really thankful for. So really, what kind of security system do we really need? But there is a peace of mind, right? In knowing that your garage door is actually closed when you're gone. And if you're wondering, you can check on your garage door, stuff like that. And I'll talk a little bit more when I actually show you around. So in summary, our whole smart home setup, really none of this is for the purpose of just having the gadget for fun. Everything has to serve a specific purpose in either making my life easier or actually making the home smarter. Now, moving on to our actual setup. Instead of going through like the fine print on the tech details, which I am sure you can find plenty of really good videos on done by proper tech geeks, and also because it will take way too much time if I go into too much detail there, I am going to focus on our use case and the practical / experiential aspects of how we actually interact as homeowners with this smart home system. And my hope is that at the end of the video, you'll have an understanding of how all the pieces in a smart home can come together and what it feels like from the end user perspective. The first component is kind of the command center, and I see this as like the access point in addition to my phone, of course. This is my control center for how to get all these devices to talk to each other and how to instruct them to do things. So my command center consists of both Siri and Google Home. So as an example, I can tell Google, "Hey Google, close the shades," and it will close all the shades. I can get more specific with this, for example, like, "Hey Google, open living room 2." And then it just opens this one specific shade. I can tell it a percentage, open it by 50%. I can do the same thing with lights. I can turn off the TV, which if you are a parent, it is tremendously helpful. Like I can be cooking and I can tell the TV to turn off because the kids are done with their TV program and they need to come out. And so there are many ways you can use this. Some people use Alexa. It really is the same thing. You just need like that command center from which to give directions. I just like the look of this round little device and it's worked out for us pretty well so far. Now, I like to use Google Home mainly when my hands are occupied, kind of like this. Or you can also control the devices from the Apple Home app, which is a native app that comes with the iPhone. Or if you did that like little pull down screen, the control center. Kind of surprising, but the Apple Home app actually loads the shades and lights faster than the native Lutron app. And so I find myself using my phone in this method quite often, kind of like a master remote for all the smart home things that exist in my house. Second piece is lighting and shades, and I control both of these through the Lutron app. And the Lutron app can also be controlled through Google, as I just showed you. Not all the shades in my home are automated, and this was mainly a cost reason. One of our biggest purpose, as I mentioned, is for energy savings and for optimizing passive solar gain. And so the reason we need automated shades is so that in the winter, for example, we can optimize letting the sun in to heat up the floors, and in the summertime, we can close the shades at the right time to minimize any outside heat gain. So based on that, we really only need smart shades on one side of the house where there is passive solar gain. So roughly half of our window shades are automated and the other half are not. These shades we got directly from Lutron and I was actually pretty impressed with their shade fabric. Is this fabric? I'm pretty impressed with their selection and I think it goes pretty well with our modern house. So this is what the shade looks like when it's open and they can be either battery or hardwired. We custom built our house, so we have hardwiring option available in the window frame, but if you're remodeling or adding this on, know that they can be battery packs too. Even for the non-automated shades, they can match that aesthetically with the automated shades. And the non-automated shades are actually really easy to pull, as you can see. I also use the remotes for opening and closing the shades. I think it's important in designing your smart home to remember that sometimes you have guests and sometimes it makes more sense to just like pick this up and go press a button instead of always looking for your phone and turning on the app or trying to tell Google. And I think I notice it most often when we have people over, they're not necessarily going to know how to operate all of your smart home things, but you still want them to have a comfortable experience in your house and know how to turn on lights and do basic stuff like that. Our lights are also part of the Lutron system, and we have it set up in different zones. So we have the pantry, different aspects of the kitchen, the dining room, the living room, the TV room, and the master bedroom. Now, we have also skipped like the bathroom and the kids' room in this, mainly because we don't need it to be part of an integrated system. It's really nice to be able to control the lighting just from talking to Google or from my phone, and you can fine-tune exactly to the percentage how bright you want a light to be. And it comes in handy more often than I think. Like, for example, I could be cooking and I want to turn on the lights, but my hands are greasy. It's so easy to tell Google to please turn on the island lights, and I don't even have to leave my workspace. The other use that we often have is, oh, we forgot to turn off the light and we've already left the house. Let's make sure that it's off and we can see that through the app. And similarly, we also have multiple access points for lights for the reasons I already mentioned. So we can tell Google, we can use the app on a phone, or also just press the buttons on the wall. Lastly, we also set it up in a timer system when we go on vacation. We were just in Hong Kong for 3 weeks, and we had our house be on a schedule of like shades opening, shades closing, lights turning on and off at odd times, to kind of look like someone was there. And this kind of goes into that security purpose and minimizing the risk of having like an empty looking house. I will say one downside of having these smart lights is that it takes like a split second for them to turn on. So you know how like normal switches, you turn them on and off and it's like instantaneous, right? For these smart lights, there's like half a second of a lag time. And it's not a big deal, but I just notice it. It's not like an immediate thing. The next system we have is KASA, and we use this kind of like the Lutron stuff for lights, but these are for our outside lights. The reason we have KASA kind of separately is because it's a little cheaper to do it that way. And we have the outdoor lights set to turn on at sunset and turn off at sunrise. And then we have Skybell. It's so cold outside right now. There is no subscription required for this, unlike Ring and some of the other security systems. It's actually got a pretty good ding, watch. It's worked out pretty well so far. However, I think we're gonna switch to Ring because we do already have a subscription for the multicam system through our Airbnb business. And this allows us to add additional like security camera type stuff. For example, adding one in the garage or at other entry points for when we go on vacation. Next, we have our ECOBEE thermostat. It's got a touch screen panel where you can change the temperature manually when you want. I also often access it through the app. Most recently, when we're gone for vacation for 3 weeks, we had it set up to turn down to a lower temperature while we're gone, and like right before we come back, it's gonna heat back up to a desired temperature. This way, you're minimizing the energy usage while you're gone, while still being able to enjoy a comfortable home when you return. In the ECOBEE system, you have different sensors that you can place into different rooms. So if this room is colder while that room is warmer, it can kind of adapt to it and treat your house as different zones. The sensors also detect motions. If you use your smart away system, it takes into account whether you're actually in that room and using that space, and the system uses that to decide whether you actually need to heat that space. I find the motion censoring to be a little more touchy. It senses our phone, the phones that have ECOBEE app set up on it, and so for me and my husband, if we're in the room with our phone, then it always detects us. But I've always been curious whether it works if I left my phone in a different room. Does it think I'm in the other room? And also for my kids, obviously they're 5 and 3, so they don't have a smartphone. And I don't know that the system is that good at detecting them if they're sitting still or if they're sleeping. I don't have actual data to decide whether or not it works, but that's my suspicion, especially when there's like a discrepancy between my expectation versus the reality of how this room is heated or cooled. And this might just be something I have to really play with in terms of the placement of the sensors and how I have it set setup. So in our app, we actually turn off the motion sensor just because I don't 100% trust it. It seems like it works pretty well even without that aspect. Of note, the ECOBEE app connects only to the HVAC system, which is half of my house. So the areas that are mini split and radiant floor heating only, so those are not controlled through ECOBEE at this moment. There's capabilities of adding those on, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in terms of what I don't have. If you made it this far into the video, please give the video a thumbs up. It really helps us reach more audiences, just like yourself, and it really helps the channel grow. So thank you for taking your time to do that. Now moving on to the next thing, we have Ratio. How it works is that it's a smart irrigation system. So in addition to us like setting a schedule for, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever, my husband does this part, so forgive me. It also takes into account the weather. So if it's raining or if it has been rainy, the system actually takes that into account and skips the watering or minimizes the watering. It also separates the yard into different zones to allow for better fine-tuning of the watering schedule to just what you need and not overdoing the watering, both because it's not great for the grass, but also for conserving water. The other thing it does is less on a day-to-day weather basis, but more as like a seasonal view. So as the weather cools down, it actually starts watering less and less. For example, for the past year, most of the watering happened during mid-July to August because we did have a lot of rain in this season. And then as it cools off late August, there's not as much need for watering, and the system kind of knows to adjust based on the temperature changes. At the time of recording, there are some rebates provided by some water providers depending on where you live. So maybe punch in your zip code and see if you have any of those offers to help you save a little bit on the device. The next thing I want to show you is Nest. We use this as our smoke detector and carbon monoxide detector. It's really nice to get alerts on this even if we're away, whereas like a traditional smoke detector, it would just beep, and if you're not physically in the house, you wouldn't know. It is hardwired so that you never have to figure out when you have to change batteries, which is a nice bonus. I feel like those batteries in the traditional smoke alarms, they always go off when you least want it to, like when you're sleeping or if you have people over. So this completely solves that problem. Additionally, it can turn on as a night light, and it's motion censored. So if I am walking through the hallway at night to get a drink of water, go to the bathroom, the little circle lights up, and it's a really effective night light. I really like that aspect. My kids don't like it. They freak out that this actually turns on. So if you have scaredy cat children, know that you can also turn it off for areas that you don't want it to light up. Chamberlain is the app that we have for a garage door. This allows us to see whether the garage door is open or closed, and if we needed to open or close remotely, we can do that. Pretty self-explanatory, and it's a great addition for security reasons, but also for energy reasons because we have a slightly heated floor in the garage, obviously at a lower temperature than our house. We don't want that energy to be dissipating with an unintentionally opened garage door, so this helps prevent that. Lastly, we have Chromecast and Apple TV. Both of these allow me to cast, say, a video from YouTube or Netflix or whatever I have on my phone or computer and display that on my TV. Pretty straightforward stuff. It's very convenient for not having to log in separately through the TV, which inevitably has like a trickier keyboard and is like way harder to search things. The other benefit of having it set up like this is that now this TV is connected to the Google command system, right? So in the example I gave in the beginning, I can turn off the TV from just telling Google, and I can also ask Google to say, play a certain movie, and it will turn on the TV and play that movie. Now that you've seen what we have in our house, let me tell you about the things that we don't have and why not. I think the most notable omission is IFT, or If This Then That, which is an app that helps you automate things within your smart home. So one example could be, if it is sunset, then turn on all the lights. Or if the UV is above a certain level on your weather widget, then close the shades by 50%. Stuff like that. The IFT app, I know currently has like 5 free automation workflows that you can build in. So it's not a limitless kind of situation. There is a limit, and then you have to start paying. The main reason we don't build this kind of logic for automation is that our scenarios, and I'm guessing for most people, your scenarios are not that simple. My day-to-day routine varies quite a bit depending on work, depending on who is at home, depending on when the baby decides to nap. So there's a lot of variables. As an example, it would seem logical to turn on the lights when it's dark. So you might think, oh well, I should set an automation to set the lights to a certain amount when it is sunrise. However, through the Lutron app, you can only set a scene, and the scene comes as a whole package. And so if you have lights throughout your house, that whole package might mean living room lights on, bedroom lights off, or whatever setup you have in that scene, right? And you have to activate that whole scene. And I find that really hard to use practically, because if someone was actually using the bedroom and their lights were on, when that scene activates, then the bedroom lights go off, even though you didn't mean for it to. I think in practice, you either have to map out all the different scenarios and build really intricate set of automation rules, like if this and that, except A, B, and C, then this happens, and then build it out for all your potential options. Or you just have very minimal variation on a day-to-day basis, and the automation rules that are not that complicated can work for you. Another thing that we don't have is that our mini splits, we could purchase a connector, I think it's around $100, that allows for it to be connected to Wi-Fi. We can set up some automation or at least manage it remotely. To be honest, we thought about doing that. We intended to, we just never got around to it. And in the few years that we have lived here, we haven't actually needed it. I still think this would be a nice to have. I know there are quite a few options for this connection out there, so if I do set it up, I will try to circle back and let you know how it goes. The last thing that we don't have set up is the Yale lock. So the door that currently accesses our garage is a Yale lock, which we have a very similar lock at our Airbnb house, and it allows us to access the lock remotely on the app. And again, we just haven't had the need to set it up, so we just left it as is. And this kind of goes back to my main thing of the smart home needing to be smart and having a purpose. In this specific instance, since we don't need it, then why bother adding an extra step into my routine, right? So that was our whole setup. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have helpful suggestions for us, for our home, or for anyone else who's watching the video who's probably thinking of how to set up their smart home, please leave them below. I'm sure it'll be really helpful for everyone else who comes across this video. And if you have any questions about our setup, I'll try my best to answer. Please forgive me, a lot of the initial looking into stuff and setting up is from like 5+ years ago. So if I don't remember something to the detail that you like, I'm sorry, but I'll try my best to give you my perspective on how it's worked out for us. Anyway, I hope you're having an amazing day, and I will see you next time. Bye!